Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're taking a close look at the full year 2025 results for Digital Core REIT. I'm Alex, and I'm joined by Ben.
Hey, Alex. Yeah, I'm really curious about this one. You see their main payout number, and it looks totally flat. But I've got a hunch there is a much bigger story going on just beneath the surface.
You got it. So let's start with that headline number, the one every REIT investor zooms in on first, the distribution per unit, or DPU. For the full year 2025, Digital Core REIT paid out 3.60 US cents. Now here's the kicker. That is the exact same number as 2024, not a single fraction of a cent different. Okay, so a flat DPU. Stable is the nice word for it, I guess. But as an investor, when I see a flat number in a pretty wild market, I've got questions. What's really going on under the hood here? Are they just treading water, or did they have to work like crazy just to stay in the exact same spot? That is 100% the right question to ask, because this is not a story about standing still, not at all. In fact, when you peel back that first layer and look at the top-line numbers, you see a company that went through a huge transformation this year. I mean, just look at this. Their gross revenue for the year just exploded, up by a staggering 72.2%. To put some real numbers on that, they went from about $102 million to over $176 million in 1 year. That's not a quiet year. That's a fundamental shift in the sheer scale of the business. Whoa, okay, hold on. 72% revenue growth that's huge. But my very next thought as an investor is, what did that growth cost them? You can't just look at the money coming in. What about the money going out? What happened to their expenses?
Right, and that's where it gets interesting. The costs grew even faster. Property expenses actually more than doubled. They were up over 100% year over year.
And here it is. This is the key that explains both of those massive numbers, that huge jump in revenue and the equally big jump in expenses. It's pretty much all down to one single event, the acquisition of a major data center in Frankfurt, Germany. So 2025 was the first full year that asset was on their books, and that one move just completely rewrote their financial story. Okay, so the Frankfurt deal explains the massive change in scale. Got it. But a big acquisition like that can sometimes hide other problems in the portfolio. So I want to know, did they face any other challenges, any, operational headwinds? And more importantly, how'd they deal with them? Exactly. For any investor, watching how a management team handles the tough stuff is often way more telling than just looking at growth numbers. It's a real test of resilience. And believe me, Digital Core REIT faced some pretty big tests in 2025. And here's a perfect case study. Their Linton Hall property. On the left side, you see the problem. In July, this key building went completely vacant. That's a huge potential hit to revenue, right? A nightmare scenario. But then, look at the right side, the solution. Within just 6 months, they had released the entire place on a new long-term deal. That is an incredibly fast and effective turnaround. Wow, that really is impressive. It shows they're not just sitting back and collecting checks. They are on the ground, actively managing this portfolio. It's no surprise that management seems pretty proud of how they did.
You're right, and that actually connects perfectly to this quote from their CEO, John Stewart. He specifically calls out the resiliency of our business and the strength of our sponsor support. And as that Linton Hall example shows, these aren't just empty corporate buzzwords for them. It's really how they operate.
All right, so they've proved they can handle a crisis. That's a big check mark. But let's talk about the future. Putting out fires is one thing, but as an investor, I need to know what they're doing to actually build long-term value. What's the growth strategy from here? Great question. So their growth strategy seems to be all about smart, strategic moves. A prime example from this year was them buying a 20% piece of a major data center over in Osaka, Japan. This was their first big step into the Asia-Pacific market. Japan's a huge data center market for sure, but why is that move so critical for them? What does it actually do for their overall business?
It's all about diversification. It's the old don't put all your eggs in one basket idea. Before this, they were really concentrated in just a few key markets, especially Northern Virginia. By getting into Japan, they spread out their risk. It makes the whole portfolio stronger and less vulnerable if one specific city has a downturn.
And remember that CEO quote? He mentioned sponsor support. This is probably their biggest secret weapon. Their sponsor is a company called Digital Realty, and they are literally the largest data center owner on the entire planet. For a smaller company like Digital Core REIT, that's like having a heavyweight champion in your corner. And this support isn't just a vague promise, it's real, tangible help. Just in 2025, their sponsor gave them an interest-free loan when they had a cash shortfall, they used their massive global network to help solve a customer bankruptcy issue, and they're the ones who made that strategic off-market deal in Japan possible. For an investor, that is a huge safety net. It takes a lot of risk off the table. Okay, that sponsor relationship is a massive advantage. But are they expanding into the right places? I mean, is the demand actually there for what they're selling?
Oh, the demand is absolutely off the charts. Just look at these vacancy rates in their key markets. In Frankfurt and Northern Virginia, vacancy is just 0.4%. That's basically zero. Their new market, Tokyo, is at a tiny 1.3%. These markets are essentially completely full, and when things are that tight, it gives landlords like them incredible pricing power when it's time to renew leases.
All right, Alex, this has been great. We've hit the big acquisition, their resilience, the future growth plan, and the strength of the markets they're in. Can you wrap this all up for us? From an investor's perspective, what's the final verdict on their year? You bet. Let's boil it all down. First, you have that stable payout, which gave investors a solid, reliable foundation. Second, there was massive acquisition-led growth that totally changed the company's size and scale. Third, they showed proven resilience, handling big challenges without missing a beat. Fourth, that strong sponsor relationship is a huge safety net and competitive edge. Fifth, they are clearly future-focused, moving into booming markets like Japan. And finally, the engine under all of this is their healthy leasing. They managed to raise rents on renewals by an average of 31%. That's that pricing power we talked about in action. So all in all, it was a really successful and transformative year for them. That's a fantastic summary, Alex. It really hammers home why you've got to look past that one flat number to see what's really going on. Thanks for breaking it all down.
My pleasure, Ben, and thanks to all of you for tuning in. Just before we sign off, the usual reminder. This content is intended to serve strictly and only as an informational, independent, objective summary of recent events, and should in no way be interpreted, construed, or relied upon by any party as inside information or financial advice.